What is up, everybody? It has been another hot minute since we have done one of these videos and one of these live shows where we kind of cycle through some of the latest news with the Cincinnati Bengals, what's going on around the league, the AFC North, etc. I'm Anthony Cosenza with CincyJungle.com, and this is the Orange and Black Insider. We're going to have kind of an abbreviated episode, we hope and plan, as we go through some of these coaching stuff and some of the news as it pertains to the Cincinnati Bengals. Obviously, some good news, selfishly speaking, for the Cincinnati Bengals in terms of what's going on with their coaches, what's going on with their staff. The band is sticking together, it would seem, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then, of course, we've got our big show tomorrow night, John Sheeran and myself. And then we're probably going to try and do some listener questions live or a little bit of a roundtable discussion on Friday about some stuff as well. But happy to be with you. If you're new here, welcome. We like to go live and just kind of, we have stuff and we talk about it live on the air, but sometimes it's not always the most perfect setup. Sometimes it's okay, but regardless, you can get this show a number of ways, whether it's live or after the live recording, one of which is on the Cincy Jungle Facebook page. You got to give a thumbs up to that there. And then, of course, right down here, you can click the channel, the YouTube channel, subscribe, click the bell to be notified when we go live, when new content is available. And then, of course, if you like the audio side of things, you can get it on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio by clicking and subscribing to the Cincy Jungle podcast channel. You can get this show. You can get Talking Football with Bengal Jim and Friends. What a great season by those guys with all kinds of cool guests. And, of course, the always great Coach Matt Minnick giving us some coach speak and chalk talk episodes. Good to see everybody here in the live chats, and good to be chatting some Bengals with you, even though the season's done. The team that I think a lot of Bengals fans were not pleased about winning the Super Bowl ended up doing it. Is what it is. But let's kind of get to something that I think we all know about, and this is good news for the Bengals, obviously. And we all have heard about this right now based on, this was a couple of days before the Super Bowl, but we just got to keep reveling in this here. And there's a couple of layers to this. Ken Riley, so deserving. We had Ken Riley the second last summer, 2 summers ago, when we did the Charity Fest. We had some great response from all of you, raised a few $1,000s between the Ken Riley 13 Foundation, the Anthony Munoz Foundation, Ken Anderson Alliance. We raised a lot of funds for that, just kind of as they unveiled the Ring of Honor. So I guess that was 2 summers ago, now that I think about it. But at any rate, Ken Riley getting his place into the Pro Football Hall of Fame, so deserving, and can't be happier for the Riley family. Obviously, we all wish that Riley Sr. was here for it, but the guy just, one of the best in the business ever at the cornerback position, always overlooked. Top 5 in career interceptions. And what a cool moment. If you watch the NFL honors, really, really cool moment. The fact that Anthony Munoz, the lone Bengal at that point in Canton, came out and was the guy to introduce Ken Riley and embrace his son on stage there, who was representing Ken Sr. Very, very cool on this. And, this is not only great for Ken Riley and his family, obviously. This is not only great for the Bengals organization, getting another player into the Hall of Fame, but it's also great, potentially, especially as these Cincinnati Bengals teams, these current ones, get into the AFC Championship games, go to Super Bowls, hopefully start winning them, that, some of these other guys that have been overlooked over the years, whether you're talking about potentially a Chad Johnson, you're talking about an AJ Green down the road, who, oh, by the way, he retired, announced his retirement recently as well. Whether you're talking about Geno Atkins when his turn comes up, Corey Dillon, maybe all of these guys out there, we go, man, Willie Anderson, that should be in the conversation or should have a place in Canton. And as the team has a little bit more recent success, and of course you get another guy like Ken Riley into the Hall of Fame, of course you're gonna potentially get some more positive attention to some of those guys. So congratulations to, of course, Dan the Man, Ken Anderson. Of course, how could I forget Ken Anderson? We've talked about it with him on the show, of course. But still, congratulations to Ken Riley and his family. Big accomplishment. All right, so The big news that came across today and came across this afternoon, it looked for a while as if potentially the Arizona Cardinals, who they parted ways with Cliff Kingsbury and are looking to resurrect things with Kyler Murray. Had a couple of moments of exciting play, made a playoff, had a recent playoff appearance and whatnot with Kyler Murray. It looked as if maybe they were going to start leaning towards Lou Anarumo, Bengals defensive coordinator, as the replacement for Kingsbury. Now, the thing that would kind of would have made it a little bit of a different route for them, obviously, was it would have been just a complete 180 from the coach, the offensive minded, the younger offensive minded coach, the unproven guy in Kingsbury that they had, and kind of going with the career NFL assistant coach, kind of the Mike Zimmery kind of guy, right? The guy who's bounced around the league a little bit, the guy who's done a lot of different things, and now getting his proper due because of what he has created in the Bengals defense. But the Arizona Cardinals decide to go with Jonathan Gannon, with Lou Anarumo being a finalist. But Jonathan Gannon, the Eagles got tapped for both of their coordinators there, and it is a defensive coordinator, so they are going with a defensive head coach this time around, not the offensive head coach that you maybe thought they would try again with the big contract to Kyler Murray and resurrect things there. They go with the different defensive coordinator there. So that is a theme in terms of the Eagles coordinators getting jobs here. So a little bit younger, and a guy that, when you look at what the Eagles defense did throughout much of the year here, you got to give props to him. But obviously, again, you see Jay Morrison of The Athletic talk about it here. When you look at what Lou was able to do against some of the better quarterbacks and all kinds of things, you would just kind of think, man, why is he not getting the run? It's kind of, it's very, I mentioned his name earlier. It's very, very similar to Mike Zimmer. And you go, man, remember all the great defenses he had in Cincinnati for a while, and he just kept getting overlooked. And you had Deion Sanders taking up for Mike Zimmer at the time and saying, hey, this guy needs to get a head coaching job, blah, blah, blah. Years and years and years go by. He finally gets a shot, and he had a pretty decent run with Minnesota. I know it didn't end the way a lot of those fans didn't want it to end, but regardless, here Gannon is now apparently the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, leaving Lou Anarumo in Cincinnati as the defensive coordinator with Zach Taylor. So that is huge, huge news for the Cincinnati Bengals and in the NFL. Additionally, a guy who was kind of flirting, I think it was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Dan Pitcher, he is going to also be staying in Cincinnati with the offensive staff, quarterbacks coach, and whatnot. And I'm pinning all of these articles that are on Cincy Jungle for your reference. If you are watching live or watching after the fact, you can pin those here, though. But a hot name, a guy who is going to be rising here. And then, of course, he had interviewed twice with the Bucs, and then, again, a guy probably next year. Now this, I think we're going to be kind of, if the Bengals continue to have these successful runs, deep postseason runs, whatnot, we're probably going to start seeing these same guys get, coaching interview after coaching interview, off seasons after off season. That's just kind of what we're looking at here. Now, the other part of that is that, and I don't have an article pinned up for that, but the other part of it is, as we know now, I guess I could bring this one up. The Indianapolis Colts went a different direction than Brian Callahan. And so who did they go? They went with the Eagles offensive coordinator, Shane Steichen. He is now the guy tabbed for the head coaching job with the Colts. Another kind of, younger offensive minded head coach here. You can see here, look at the rankings though. When you look at the Eagles offense, third in points per game, third in yards per game, sixth in yards per play, fifth in rushing yards per game. I actually thought it would even be higher than that based on what they were able to do on the ground there. Ninth in passing yards a game, third in yards per pass. I mean, these are just eye-popping numbers in terms of what he was able to achieve with Jalen Hurts. And obviously, Jalen Hurts, a borderline MVP type of season from him, came oh so close to winning the Super Bowl this year. So Steichen gets the job with the Indianapolis Colts. You kind of figured that the Colts were going to make it interesting with Jim Irsay at the head there, and they sure did, but they had some interest in Brian Callahan, and he is sticking around. So now you've got Brian Callahan, you've got Dan Pitcher, and you've got Lou Anarumo all staying put for the Cincinnati Bengals and their coaching staff. And here you go. Now, you saw kind of the disclaimer from Mike Garafolo of the NFL Network saying, Pitcher's probably a guy to watch for offensive coordinator jobs next year. You're going to probably see the cycle with Anarumo. You're going to probably see the same thing with Callahan if the Bengals offense and their team continues to succeed. So it's going to be paramount. And I know Joe Burrow talked about the window being open for his entire career, but this season is really going to be paramount, particularly when we're talking about contract extensions, important contracts coming up on the horizon, retaining some key players this offseason. You've now retained the head coaches. This coming season becomes crucial for the Cincinnati Bengals in their quest for a Lombardi trophy. They have to capitalize on the fact that they have their coaches still in place, despite the sustained success over the course of 2 seasons, despite the great output on offense and defense. And so they really need to capitalize on keeping those guys around, really need to re-sign some of their key guys, extend key guys, and then add in a few pieces, obviously, that are immediate impact guys in free agency in the draft. So if you're a Cincinnati Bengals fan, if you're a player on the Bengals right now, you're probably pretty psyched that the band is coming back together. They're sticking together, and they're going on another run with it, and we'll see exactly what happens with that. But again, 2023 seems to be a year that just the Bengals need to really capitalize and take that one last step forward with everything. That being said, the Bengals also had a new player join them. Now, this was actually a waiver claim that was made before the AFC Championship game, and that is for former Chief Chris Lamon's defensive back, a guy that the Bengals really like there. So he's a cornerback, and initially I think a lot of it was kind of, hey, are they going to tap some information there going into the Chiefs game in terms of what the defensive mindset is and all that. Who knows how deep that really went, but Lamons now is officially with the Bengals because that waiver claim couldn't have been made couldn't have been fully processed until after the season was over. So he is officially now with the Cincinnati Bengals this season, and they're looking to round out that cornerback depth chart there. And so there's the link for everybody here in the live chats for you. But Chris Lamons officially now, even though the waiver claim was made before the AFC Championship game went through, now that technically the Super Bowl is over, the season's over, etc. Okay, we're going to keep rolling on here and do a little bit more Bengals news. And then, of course, we're going to go through some of the stuff happening within the division and around the league in terms of head coaching stuff. Keep it a brief episode. So, we'll keep it manageable, but also so give you enough things so you're informed and caught up with everything in case you hadn't been keeping up with a lot of the stuff that takes place, the flurry of information leading up to and after the Super Bowl here. So, this is a popular name here, and one that starting to be connected with the Bengals quite a bit here. And talking about a kind of a mid-late round tight end from Notre Dame. Where have we heard that one in the first round for the Bengals? Mid to late round pick in the first round, rather. Notre Dame, big guy, tight end, exciting player. And Michael Mayer is a guy who is starting to be mocked to the Bengals. Now, tight end is very thin for the Cincinnati Bengals right now. Hayden Hurst is set to be a free agent after that 1-year kind of prove it deal. I would think the Bengals would like to re-sign him, but we'll see what happens there. I believe Mitchell Wilcox, we talked about it last week. I think he's a restricted free agent. You've also got Drew Sample coming up. So that tight end room is really, really bare going into this offseason. So that's where this kind of makes a lot of sense. Of course, adding another big weapon for Joe Burrow. You lose CJ Uzomah in free agency this last offseason. So, there's a lot of dots being connected with this here. And this one specifically, this is from SB Nation's home site. So it's the first post Super Bowl 2023 mock draft. So he is a somewhat local guy, Kentucky, and he is 6'4". A lot of people also, when you look at this guy, obviously everybody says, oh, great receiving target. He ended with, you see this here, junior season, 809 receiving yards on 67 receptions. And then sophomore season, exciting, 840 yards, 71 catches. But regardless, what he's going to surprise you as a blocker a little bit. Mayer is. So this could be right around where he goes. Going to be very interesting to see how he tests at the combine, pro day, etc. But that is a guy that is definitely one to keep tabs on going forward. He's going to help you out a little bit more as a blocker than a lot of people would think. I think he's surprising some folks in that regard. But Bengals have a lot of areas that they want to obviously shore up. That's a position that's kind of bare. They got to figure out the offensive line. I know they did a lot there last year in terms of investments, 4 new starters. We know the deal, but when you lose that many starters down the road, you got to have the proper guys behind them to be able to step in spot starts and carry you through some of these big games. Now, admirably, some of those guys, Denegi and Jackson Carman, is particularly when you look at the Bills game, they played well enough for the Bengals to really have a convincing win there. But now you're almost looking like the Bengals need to almost build an entire, potential starting offensive line, be it free agents and or draft picks, behind the starters that they currently have. And then, of course, you've got the question at right tackle here between the injuries for Lael Collins. There were moments of dominance last year, moments of not so much dominance there. So big decision to be made at right tackle too. So that's one avenue the Bengals could look at, tight end, and that would obviously be a bit exciting because give you, again, a little bit in the pass blocking game, but also a lot in the receiving game. Michael Mayer from Notre Dame. Okay, let's talk a little bit AFC North here. This is something, and this is, I believe this is from Baltimore Beatdown, SB Nation's Baltimore Ravens site. Here you go. The report is Lamar Jackson's input was folded into the evaluation process for the next offensive coordinator hire. So they are tapping him into getting, kind of taking his opinion, taking his stock in who he would like and what kind of play caller he would like, what kind of system he'd like to see involved in Baltimore for him. Thus pointing to the fact that the Baltimore Ravens have long-term plans, long-term hopes for Lamar Jackson to return to them. Obviously, as we know, his contract is up. They have yet to come to an agreement. Lamar Jackson didn't play the rest of the end of the season, missed both games against the Cincinnati Bengals, regular season finale and the playoff game wherein the Bengals won. Tyler Huntley played pretty admirably in the wild card loss for the Ravens, but obviously, Jackson's just a different weapon, a different player, and they missed him. But there's an impasse there. Jackson's had some injuries the past couple of years, and they have not come to an agreement. But regardless of that, Jackson was, the report says that his input was taken for the offensive coordinator process, and that is from John Harbaugh in the I think it was from BaltimoreRavens.com in the review press conference. So Harbaugh talked about that. Just who is their new offensive coordinator? Well, it's a guy that the Bengals themselves and Bengals fans potentially are or should be familiar with. Todd Monken, a guy who was with the Georgia Bulldogs this last year, back-to-back national champions. And a couple of years ago, he was a guy who interviewed with the Bengals for their offensive coordinator position. And he was previously with Tampa Bay, I think, or maybe it was this offseason he had been interviewing with Tampa Bay. But regardless, a guy that he's kind of familiar in NFL circles. The Bengals had a little bit of a tie to him with their interviews of him a few years ago. So he is now going to be joining the Baltimore Ravens as their offensive coordinator, kind of one of those hot names again here. And you can see here, Ben Watson, former NFL tight end. Y'all got a good one. Can't wait to see Todd's ingenuity on display with the talent on the roster. Perfect fit. And then you see Josina Anderson. I'm told the Ravens decided on Todd Monken as their offensive coordinator because, quote, he's a great teacher, versatile, and has a great handle on the new age and traditional aspects of football, has experience calling plays, knows how to keep the room light, but still be demanding. So the Baltimore Ravens are excited by this hire. Again, a guy in which the Bengals have some familiarity, given some ties a couple of years ago there. And so he's now going to be tasked with doing some different things with the Baltimore Ravens. Now, what we don't know is what's going to happen with Lamar Jackson. It sounds like the team wants Lamar Jackson there. It sounds like they're still trying to work out a deal, but there are some wild things being talked about and this is from our buddy Chris Rolling over at Bengals Wire, relaying this from, I believe, was it Adam Schefter or I'm sorry, Ian Rappaport, Mike Garafolo, Tom Pelissero. Here it is, though. The Baltimore Ravens will place the franchise tag on quarterback Lamar Jackson if the sides cannot agree to a long-term deal in the coming weeks. So that is, all things considered, Lamar Jackson is going to be a Baltimore Raven next year, be it on a, that franchise tag or if they work something out long-term. But there's there are some rumors here about, if in this, I think it's the last part of this statement after the franchise tag, there's a possibility other teams could tempt Baltimore to trade the former NFL MVP for a windfall of draft picks. Per sources, there's talk about, would Miami do a deal with Tua to Baltimore? What might that look like? So, the Baltimore Ravens have some options, even though this has been kind of an ongoing saga for a long time with Lamar Jackson. He's probably going to get the tag. It would seem as if right now, sitting here in mid-February, that he's probably going to get the franchise tag at this point, but stranger things have happened. They just haven't come to an impasse. And quite honestly, I think that might be, even though it's not the most financially savvy move, I think, what is it, 40 million or something now for the franchise tag for a quarterback. It's not the most financially savvy move for the team. I think there's a lot of wisdom in it, just personally speaking. I think because of the injuries and Lamar's, style of play, injuries are always going to be a risk with him, given all the excitement that he brings with his style of play. And then, you haven't been able, he's got a figure in mind. You haven't been able to kind of connect that bridge and make a contract come together. And maybe this is just something that you work with. And, oh, by the way, you also have this kind of ace in the hole, so to speak, if other teams come calling and say, hey, we're going to give up the farm here for him. And Baltimore Ravens, being the well-run organization that they are, they may kind of be pretty confident in themselves and say, you know what, well, we've only got a 1 year kind of tie to Lamar, and it's the franchise tag. We were going to kind of let this play out, and now we've got a bunch of picks and things to do to play with here. I don't know. Very, very interesting kind of set of situations that could play out here for the Baltimore Ravens, and we'll see how they work it out. But as of now, Lamar Jackson still trying to get some form of a contract situation resolved with the Baltimore Ravens. I already put this one out here which is Shane Steichen as the Colts' new head coach, and kind of keeping with a little bit really, really just odd situation with Eric Bieniemy, another guy, obviously with former Bengals ties and whatnot. A guy who is very well respected as the offensive coordinator of the explosive Chiefs offense. And this is from Athlon Sports here, kind of a rundown here. Tyreek Hill, he's pretty displeased as to what's going on with Eric Bieniemy. meaning that he has been passed over for head coaching opportunities again this year. He's even kind of maybe thinking about what is seemingly a lateral move, potentially to Washington to be their offensive coordinator. Maybe have there's this kind of stigma a little bit of, he's not the guy that fully calls the plays. It's Andy Reid. There's some stuff in Bieniemy's past that I don't know, maybe teams are kind of shying away from, but it's really pretty inexplicable as to why he has not had an opportunity to be a head coach at this point, given the success of the Kansas City Chiefs and given the success of their offense. Just, he's been a big part of that. So a lot of folks around the league are kind of sounding off saying, this is very disappointing. Why is he not getting the shot he deserves and all of that? So look, he's probably got to bide some time, and maybe he is thinking or feeling that his best route at this point, be it fair or unfair, that he needs to go to potentially another organization and I guess reprove himself while being kind of the sole play caller and kind of the guy, and not kind of have this brain trust here with Andy Reid. Now that's a little bit of a knock that we've heard a little bit on Brian Callahan as well. When he's been interviewing for head coaching jobs and whatnot, he's kind of involved in the process. He's not the only, he's got not the solo guy in the process in terms of play calling and whatnot. There's kind of this brain trust between he, pitcher, Burrow, Taylor, that kind of come together with game plans and whatnot. And there's a little bit of a criticism here with that, but unfortunately, it seems like we've talked about this for I don't know 3 years now with Eric Bieniemy, where you're like, man, what's the deal here? So let's we'll kind of end on that. Don't mean to end on a sour note necessarily, at least as it goes with Eric Bieniemy, but it looks like he's either going to be, staying in Kansas City, kind of serving in a similar role, or he's going to be a guy that goes potentially elsewhere and maybe tries to reprove himself as a sole offensive coordinator at this point. But that's kind of the latest on what's going on with the coaching situations around the NFL, some of the news and notes as it pertains to the AFC North and the Cincinnati Bengals. Bottom line, Lou Anarumo, Brian Callahan, Dan Pitcher, they are all sticking around in Cincinnati after being interviewed around the NFL for differing positions. Very good news for Joe Burrow, for that defense, and for the team in general, not only for continuity purposes, but if you now, you look at the Bengals impending free agents, Jesse Bates, Von Bell, Eli Apple, all of these guys that have been high contributors on the defensive side of the ball. You may not have had this clamoring back from some of them, this clamoring to come back to the Bengals for some of them, if Anarumo was not the guy that returned, right? I mean, you might have had players say, oh, Lou's gone. Maybe I'll follow him. Maybe, so having that back is a key thing for the Cincinnati Bengals. And, like I said, I mean, while for me, in my humble opinion, while you bring those guys back and you have everybody back and you got that continuity now, I don't want to say the pressure rises, but the expectations are still going to be really high, definitely amongst the fan base. Who knows about the national media, right? I mean, they're so fickle on the Cincinnati Bengals. It's hard to tell exactly what they're thinking or how they're feeling about them. Regardless, Bengals add a few pieces. They keep their coaching staff intact, and 2023 could be a very special year for them. Hopefully that's the case. I'm Anthony Cosenza with CincyJungle.com. Keep it there for all your news, opinions, analysis, videos, podcasts, all kinds of stuff. We've got all kinds of stuff rolling through the off season here. No off days for us as we continue to bring you free agency coverage, draft coverage, all kinds of different things. Obviously, season recaps still in the hopper, and breaking news, opinions, all that kind of stuff. You can get this show and the others on the Cincy Jungle podcast channel. Audio side, once again, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all of the major ones, we are there. And then, of course, you can click this little icon down in the corner there, the show icon, subscribe, click that bell to be notified when we go live, when new content is available. And we'll be bringing you a lot of different stuff on the podcast side too, including free agency profiles, draft profiles, listener questions live, roundtables, special guests, all kinds of stuff. We're going to keep it rolling for you. Thank you so much. Really, I guess I got to say this, and well, maybe I should have saved. Maybe I should save a bit of it for tomorrow. Maybe I will. But thank you for sticking with us on this show at Cincy Jungle throughout the Bengals' exciting 2022/23 season. Thank you so much for all of your support, for subscribing, for downloading, for reading, everything. Can't thank you all enough. This is a passion project, a labor of love. And we hope that you like what we do, and we just appreciate all the support you've shown us, not only over the course of a handful of years with this show, but also on the website for a long time. And this year in particular, we had another special year for the Cincinnati Bengals, and can't thank you all enough for all the support. I know I echo the sentiments of my co-host, John Sheeran, the other hosts of the other shows, and of course, all of the writers, editors, contributors at Cincy Jungle. Thank you so much. We'll be back with a lot more. Bengals coaching staff intact. Gotta love that. We'll see you soon.